You can feel it, can't you? That strange, unshakable sense that you're not the same person you were 6 months ago, 3 months ago, maybe even 3 weeks ago. Something fundamental has shifted inside you, and you can't quite explain it to anyone, because the language for what's happening doesn't exist in regular conversation. How do you tell someone that your entire reality feels different? Not because circumstances changed, not because life suddenly became easier, but because you changed at a level so deep that the old world doesn't fit you anymore. You don't feel broken. You don't feel lost. You don't even feel confused. You feel awake, like you've been walking through a dream that wasn't yours. And suddenly, without warning, you stepped through a doorway you didn't even know existed. And on the other side, everything is sharper, more vivid, more real, more aligned, more true than anything you've ever experienced. And no, that's not your imagination. That's not denial. That's not spiritual bypassing. That's not wishful thinking. That's recognition. That's you realizing that something real has shifted, not outside of you, but within you, at a level where reality itself now feels different. You didn't just change your habits. You didn't just change your mindset. You didn't just grow a little stronger. You shifted timelines. And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean it in the most literal sense possible. You are no longer living the life you were headed toward. You are entering the life you were always meant for. The life God designed before fear, conditioning, trauma, and survival mode ever had a chance to rewrite your story. You're stepping into the timeline where everything you've been carrying finally makes sense. Because now, finally, you're in the version of reality where those pieces actually fit. And I know you've noticed it. You've felt things falling away. People you thought would be in your life forever suddenly feel distant. Not wrong, not bad, just unfamiliar. Dreams you clung to for years dissolve. And instead of devastation, you feel peace. Instead of grief, you feel relief. Instead of panic, you feel trust. Patterns you swore you'd never break. Just stop. Not through force, not through effort, not through discipline or willpower. They just release you. And what's wild is that you're not mourning the way you thought you would. You're not fighting to hold on. You're not begging the past to stay. You're not aching with loss. There's just this quiet, steady knowing that those things belong to a version of you that no longer exists. Because the old you, the one who tolerated less, the one who dimmed to fit, the one who carried other people's expectations like they were your own, that version of you didn't fade slowly. It didn't fragment. It didn't half disappear. It ended. Completely. And what's standing here now is the version of you that was always supposed to emerge. The version that got buried under survival. The version that got silenced by fear of being too much, too different, too aligned with something people couldn't understand. The version that learned to shrink just to stay safe. The version that learned to compromise truth just to belong. That version is gone. And what's here now doesn't need permission anymore. Doesn't need validation from people who were never meant to see you clearly in the first place. Doesn't need approval from systems that only rewarded the parts of you that stayed small. This version just knows. And you've probably been experiencing things you can't explain to anyone. Synchronicities too specific to be coincidence. Numbers appearing everywhere, like breadcrumbs on a trail you didn't consciously choose, but somehow recognize. Songs playing at the exact moment you needed to hear those exact words. Strangers saying things that answer questions you only asked silently in your mind. Dreams that don't feel symbolic. They feel familiar, like memories from somewhere you haven't physically been, but somehow recognize anyway. A homesickness for a place you've never visited. A longing for something you can't name. A certainty about things you have no logical reason to be certain about. That's not randomness. That's not chaos. That's not your mind playing tricks on you. That's confirmation. Confirmation that you're locked into the timeline where your destiny unfolds the way God designed it. And here's what most people don't understand about timeline shifts. They don't happen because you forced them. They don't happen because you manifested harder. They don't happen because you visualized better or affirmed longer or tried to become more positive. They happen because you surrendered. You surrendered the life you were clinging to. You surrendered the version of yourself you were trying to protect. You surrendered the outcomes you were trying to control. And for the first time, really for the first time, you trusted that God's plan for your life might actually be bigger than your own. You stopped micromanaging the universe. You stopped manipulating circumstances. You stopped performing for an audience that was never going to applaud the real you anyway. And the moment you released all of that, the moment you allowed yourself to be messy and uncertain and human and still figuring things out, reality rearranged itself around your authenticity. Doors that were closed didn't just open, they dissolved. Paths you never would have taken suddenly felt inevitable. People who belong in this timeline appeared without forcing, without chasing, without strategy. Opportunities you once thought were unrealistic suddenly feel obvious, not because they got easier, but because you finally got aligned. You're not pushing anymore. You're not grinding anymore. You're not forcing outcomes anymore. You're flowing. And flow is the frequency of destiny. I need you to understand something. The reason you feel so different now isn't because you're healing from the past. It's because you're no longer vibrating at the frequency of the past. You're not carrying old pain the same way. You're not triggered by the same things. You're not reacting from the same wounds. You're not repeating the same cycles disguised as different faces. You're not attracting the same lessons disguised as new people. You've completed cycles some people never complete. You've broken patterns that ran through generations before you ever existed. You've released trauma that wasn't even originally yours to carry. And now, you're living in the timeline where all of that is behind you. Not suppressed, not ignored, not bypassed, complete. This is the timeline where you get to build something new. Not from wounds, not from fear, not from lack, not from proving yourself, but from wholeness, from overflow, from alignment, from the truth of who you were underneath every layer you had to shed just to survive. The old you couldn't have lived here. The old you would have self-sabotaged the moment things got good, would have pushed away blessings because receiving felt more dangerous than hoping, would have doubted ease because struggle felt familiar, would have mistrusted peace because chaos once felt like home. But this version of you, this version is built for what's coming. You're built for relationships that don't require you to shrink. You're built for success that doesn't compromise your integrity. You're built for peace that doesn't feel boring. It feels safe. You're built for joy that doesn't come with anxiety attached. You're built for a life that feels aligned instead of achieved. You're built for the destiny God whispered to you in quiet moments when you were the only one listening, when no one else could hear it yet, but somehow, deep down, you always could. And I know you've wondered, am I imagining this? Am I just coping? Am I just telling myself a story to make sense of how much has changed? But then, another sign appears. Another confirmation lands. Another moment happens where reality bends toward you in a way that feels too intentional to be coincidence. And you realize, this isn't a story you're telling yourself. This is the story that's been waiting for you to step into it. The timeline where you don't just survive, you thrive. The timeline where you don't just exist, you create. The timeline where you don't just hope for better, you become the person better was always meant to find. This is your confirmation. The discomfort you felt in the old life wasn't misalignment with yourself. It was alignment with your destiny trying to pull you forward. The people who left weren't rejecting you. They were clearing space for the ones who belong in this timeline. The doors that closed weren't denying you. They were redirecting you toward the path that was always yours. And now, you're here, on the other side of the shift, on the timeline where your prayers aren't answered because you begged, but because you aligned, where your dreams manifest not because you chased, but because you embodied the frequency they exist on, where your purpose unfolds not because you figured everything out, but because you finally trusted that you don't have to. The old you is gone, not because it was bad, not because it was weak, not because it was wrong, but because it served its purpose. It got you here. It taught you what you needed to learn. It broke the patterns that kept you small. It survived what it had to survive, so this version of you could finally live. And now you get to build something entirely new in this timeline, something that reflects who you actually are. not who you were conditioned to be, something that honors the journey while celebrating the arrival, something that proves God's timing is always perfect, even when it didn't feel like it, even when it felt late, even when it felt unfair, even when it felt like everyone else was moving forward while you were standing still, wondering if you'd missed your moment, even when it hurt. Not the kind of hurt you could explain easily, but the kind that sat quietly in your chest, the kind that made you question yourself, the kind that made you wonder why something you prayed for didn't come, or why something you loved had to leave, even when it confused you, when nothing made sense, when doors closed without explanation, when plans collapsed without warning, when the future felt blurry and the past felt heavy and the present felt like it was asking more of you than you thought you had to give, even when it broke you open, before it ever built you back stronger, before you understood why the breaking was necessary, before you realized that what shattered wasn't your life. It was the version of you that could no longer carry where you were meant to go. Because sometimes God doesn't rebuild you gently. Sometimes He dismantles what no longer fits. Sometimes He clears what no longer aligns. Sometimes He removes what you were clinging to so you can finally receive what you were always meant for. And now you can see it. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough to know. Nothing was wasted. No pain was pointless. No delay was random. No ending was accidental. Every detour redirected you. Every loss refined you. Every waiting season strengthened you. Every closed door protected you from something your old self would have walked into without knowing it wasn't meant for them. This is where your life begins. Not starts over, begins. Not from brokenness, but from clarity. Not from survival, but from alignment. Not from fear, but from truth. Right here, right now, in this exact moment, on this exact timeline, the one you were always meant to live, even when you didn't know it, even when you doubted it, even when you felt like life was falling apart instead of falling into place. And if you feel this in your bones, if something in your chest tightened while listening to this, if every word feels like it's touching something you felt but never had language for, then this isn't random. This isn't coincidence. This isn't just another message. This is confirmation. And I want you to write this in the comments. The old me is gone. Don't write it casually. Don't write it just because it sounds good. Don't write it unless something inside you knows it's true. Don't write it unless you're ready to stop identifying with the version of you that survived and start standing in the version of you that's finally living. Because when you declare it, you're not just speaking words. You're claiming identity. You're closing a chapter. You're anchoring yourself into the version of reality you've already stepped into. You're not just saying it for yourself. You're speaking it into this community. You're joining everyone else who felt that shift, who crossed that invisible threshold. Who knows what it feels like when life suddenly feels lighter? Not because it's easier, but because you're no longer fighting who you are. You're joining the ones who stopped shrinking, the ones who stopped settling, the ones who stopped waiting for permission, the ones who finally chose alignment over approval, peace over performance, truth over comfort. Write it, claim it, let it land, and watch how reality confirms what your soul already knows. You're exactly where you belong, not behind, not late, not lost, not broken, right on time. The old you is gone, and what's here now, that's who you've been becoming all along.